Hello everyone. I think it's time to discuss about Jai Opetaia, and specifically A Tale of Two Belts. So, without further ado, let's get right into this. Jai Opetaia. So, he first won his IBF title along with the Ring Magazine title, July 7th, 2022, when he beat Mairis Briedis as an underdog. At the time, it was celebrated as a very impressive win overall in world boxing, a breakout win for a young Australian star when at the time the sport didn't have many. This was shortly after the Teofimo Lopez and Cambosis fight, in which that sort of opened the doors for eyes on Australian boxing, and big things were set out for Jai Opetaia. That was a performance that you can go back and highly appreciate the grit of Opetaia to persevere, as has been stated ad nauseum, with a broken jaw to beat a great champion in Mairis Briedis, who had only ever suffered a defeat to Alexander Usyk. But after that fight, we saw not a great run of form. Opetaia was signed with Matchroom and Eddie Hearn, first took on Jordan Thompson, who was not expected to do great things, at least not among world boxing. In British boxing, there was expectation for him because of his size, but he had struggled with lesser opposition, such as Vasil Dukhar. Then came a fight with Ellis Zorro. Again, seemingly another opportunity to boost the profile of Opetaia, to put him on a Riyadh season card in Saudi Arabia. However, Jai Opetaia's history with the IBF and vacating titles has already begun, because against Ellis Zorro, at the time, Mairis Briedis was declared to be mandatory for the IBF title. Now, Briedis himself even admitted that he was injured and not interested in facing Opetaia within the ordered time frame. However, even with that stated, the IBF did not want to approve another title bout in the interim. Therefore, Opetaia vacated the title against Ellis Zorro in order to pursue, again, a large payday in Saudi Arabia, which is understandable, but still, it showed that he was willing to give up the title. Now, everything seemingly works out in the end, because his very next fight is a rematch against Mairis Briedis, another difficult fight for Opetaia, where he wins it 8-4 on 2 of the scorecards and 9-3 on the other, reclaiming the IBF world title. But where did Opetaia go from there? Well, as IBF champion, the list of opponents became pretty clear. Either pursue a unification and chase undisputed, or go down the IBF rankings and fight contenders. The latter was chosen. Whether or not it was all his fault is a little bit in the past at this point. But let's continue through his career. Post Briedis, Opetaia went on a run of Jack Massey and David Naika, who were admirable opponents. Jack Massey notably beat, I believe it was Isaac Chamberlain, and David Naika and Opetaia had some history, both being oceanic fighters. I believe that it was marketed as a sort of domestic fight for the world title, but Naika was only, I believe, 11-0 at the time, not very experienced at world level. Jack Massey, while experienced, had serious limitations. Then Opetaia went on his IBF run, which started with Claudio Squeo, a 190-pound Italian fighter who I'm sure is very capable, but just not at world level, where Opetaia destroyed him through 5 rounds. That was due to a delay between himself and the Hussein Sin Cara fight, where Sin Cara was the IBF mandatory. That was also delayed due to injury. But Sin Cara didn't have many notable names on the resume, came into the fight at around 40 years old, I believe, and again, Opetaia dealt with him swiftly. But with no mandatories that seemingly worth fighting, and no unifications on the horizon, where was Opetaia to go? Well, enter Zuffa Boxing. While Dana is looking to build his brand, Zuffa Boxing, along with TKO and that entire gigantic combat sports company, he thinks about the option that he has. Now, Zuffa Boxing currently is not interested in the biggest superstars of the sport, or if they are, not signing them to very long-term deals. Currently, they're operating within their means. However, Jai Opetaia, I believe, made a lot of sense as an inaugural signing for eventually a Zuffa title. The UFC had already had a very, as they describe, blockbuster deal with the Golden Coast government, one in which Jai Opetaia has ties to as well. Opetaia, along with his management team, Tasman Fighters, there was a lot of cross streams with the UFC there. It made a lot of sense for Jai to move to Zuffa Boxing, even though Eddie Hearn has also signed a deal with Australia to promote boxing over there. I believe it came down to the deal they were willing to offer Opetaia wasn't one Hearn was willing to match, much like the Conor Benn situation, although I won't really get into that too much. But from the sounds of it, the offer was too good for Hearn to want to match or Jai to say no. But here's really where we begin this tale of two belts around Jai Opetaia. Because Opetaia has a lot of frustrations in his career. You know, whether it's because the finances don't pan out from Turkey, Sella, or whichever promoter, Opetaia has been very clear in his demands for unification bouts. But much to the disappointment of Opetaia, it was Zurdo Ramirez and Chris Billam-Smith who got the first chance of unifying any cruiserweight titles since Usyk beat Murat Gassiev. Chris Billam-Smith was in this position after beating his British rivals in Lawrence Coley and Richard Riakporhe. Zurdo Ramirez tested at 190-pound catchweight against Joe Smith before committing to cruiserweight, where he beat Arsene Gulmerian, who until then was holding the belt hostage. And the WBC title, won by Badu Jack against Makabu, was held up with Don King, where Jack and Mihalian went back and forth in their two-bout series. But all of that to say that Jai is left out to dry, whether he is being avoided or ducked because he is that good, or whether the money for that kind of fight is just not on the table. Who's willing to pay that? Not happening. Well, the other problem is, with all these unifications, is that Zuffa Boxing has been very clear that they are not interested in the current sanctioning titles, that they want the Zuffa title to be recognized as a world title. Otherwise, they would not be trying to change the Muhammad Ali Act. And whether it's Dana White, TKO, whoever wants to say that they're not looking to change, quote, a single word of the bill, that's not accurate. They've been at Capitol Hill for months, lobbying, spending unheralded amounts of money to try to change this bill, and it's for good reason. It's because they don't want to see the sanctioning body titles be the only way that you can represent a world champion. They want to have an in-house title. Now, this confused the boxing world in large part, where Opetaia, upon signing with Zuffa Boxing, maintained, and I quote, "I want to be the best cruiserweight in the world, and I want to be undisputed. I haven't lost sight of that." Well, you may have not lost sight of that, but are you sure that Zuffa Boxing is interested in fulfilling your dreams of becoming undisputed? In every post-fight interview, I remember Opetaia saying that he wants to be undisputed, that he wants the other champions. The frustration of not getting those fights, again, not looking to place blame, just stating it how it is. But he maintains that he's going to be undisputed. Even in an interview with RG, he said, and I quote, "Undisputed. Don't take your mind off undisputed. We're chasing unification fights. If we don't get one by the end of the year, I'll be very effing disappointed. Undisputed. When you think of me, you think, bro, he wants to be undisputed. That's it. I'm not worried about anything else. I don't chase names. I don't even care if it was Zerto or if it was Benavidez or if it was back when it was Billam-Smith. I actually respect these dudes. I think they're great fighters. Upon signing the deal, he's maintaining this undisputed dream, this undisputed status. Well, Jai Opetaia's debut opponent for Zuffa Boxing was announced, and that was, as we saw the past weekend, Brandon Glanton. So here we are talking about the Ali Act, changing it, signing Opetaia, and here's his opponent, Brandon Glanton, who came into the contest at 21 wins and 3 losses. He's a very capable fighter, ranked number 15 in the IBF, the title in which Opetaia holds, number 10 in the Ring Magazine Cruiserweight rankings. He's arguably best known for a valiant effort against Billam-Smith, the former champion, and when he beat Jai Opetaia in a thriller, in a fight that he was not expected to win. So Brandon Glanton is, by all stretches of the imagination, a capable opponent. Certainly better than the 40-year-old men from Turkey and the 190-pound Italians that Opetaia was making a diet of as of late. But again, for what belts? Well, lo and behold, it gets announced. History will be made. The inaugural Zuffa Boxing Cruiserweight World Championship and the Ring Magazine title. This is a graphic that was posted on the Ring Magazine Twitter account, which was then reposted by Zuffa Boxing. We then have here on the right, Zuffa Boxing, big fight feels that Jai Opetaia vs. Brandon Glanton is for the first ever Zuffa Boxing Cruiserweight World title tomorrow. And there it's being held up. Now, there were reports at the time that the IBF was considering pulling sanction in large part because they felt disrespected by the promotion. They felt that their world title was not being presented as such. There was reports that they cited the fact that the Zuffa title being held overhead or in the middle of the two fighters made it or presented it as the primary title on the line, and that the IBF would refuse to sanction any unification fights that are not between the WBA, the WBC, or the WBO. Well, putting it all on the line tonight, we have here, but it's showing that IBF title in the bottom. Now, really quick, I'd like to point out how funny it is that Dana White said Zuffa Boxing is returning to the original 8 weight divisions in boxing, and his first ever Zuffa title is for the Cruiserweight division, a division that is not part of the original 8. That aside, the Zuffa title also, to this point, until federal law is changed, must be considered nothing more than a trophy. If it is being presented as an actual title, that is in violation of federal law. Whether or not anything gets done of it, because of the connection between Zuffa, TKO, and the federal administration, remains to be seen. But my bet, likely not. Especially because, how do you prove that something is being presented as an official title? Based on the presentation of this very event, it would seem to me that the Zuffa title was the one on the line the most. In this image here, it's the focus of the photograph. But it's still just a trophy? That's very interesting to me. When talking about what titles are on the line in this fight, first, let's go to the ring. So, the reason why I'm saying it's a tale of 2 belts and not 3 is because the ring is basically a non-factor here. One of the so-called perks of having a ring title is that there are no mandatories. It's more of a designation of the lineal champion. You earn it by beating whoever was number 1 at the weight class, or if there's a vacancy of that title, then the number 1 and 2 contenders, if they do fight, the ring belt can be on the line. In rare cases, number 1 and 3 can also fight for the ring title. But beyond that, there are really no requirements to the ring title or who can fight for it. It's just the man who beat the man. Now comes the IBF. March 3rd, 3 days before the fight, Dan Rafael reported that whether Opetaia Glanton on Sunday is for the IBF belt or not is unsettled. Per an IBF statement to me today, quote, the IBF is not making public statements at this time regarding Opetaia versus the Glanton bout. Member of Opetaia team, quote, the word is no agreement yet. And this is March 3rd, 3 days before the fight. From the same source, nothing was done March 4th. Then, the IBF, on their website, puts out the only statement that is publicly available. A lot of these things were released through email, to press statements forwarded out and about. But if you go to their website, if you are a fan of boxing, like myself, who wants to know what the IBF thinks, this is the only thing that they have. I'm not going to read it all. You can go to the website, but I'm just going to highlight a few parts. So, it says here, quote, after continued dialogue on March 3rd, Opetaia's team confirmed the fight would not be a unification and that any belt awarded by Zuffa would be, quote, characterized as a trophy or token of recognition. The IBF has not had any discussion regarding this bout with any direct representative from Zuffa Boxing. However, the organization received assurances from Opetaia's representatives that this would be the case. It goes on to say further that they are going to withdraw sanction of the fight, and that, quote, with sanction withdrawn, the Opetaia versus Glanton bout is now an unsanctioned contest. IBF Rule 5H states in part, quote, an unsanctioned contest is a fight which the IBF has not formally approved for sanction or where sanction has been formally withdrawn. If a champion participates in an unsanctioned contest within his prescribed weight limit, the title will be declared vacant whether the champion wins or loses the bout. That is all directly from the IBF. Well, the fight happens. The fight goes through. It's clear it's for the Zuffa title. It's clear it's for the ring title. The IBF states here that this is now an unsanctioned contest, and therefore the winner will be declared vacant whether or not they win or lose. Whether or not we like the reasons that the IBF pulled sanction, they are saying that they have done it. The fight happens. I'm not going to talk too much about the fight because I don't think that that's particularly interesting to this conversation, but it's a fight in which Opetaia puts in an admirable performance. He wins a large majority of the rounds, 10-2, I would say on average, maybe 11-1, but certainly a dominant performance, one in which the referee was overzealous at times, took way too many points for actions that were not egregious, but there's not too much to talk about with the fight itself. In the post-fight interview, all kinds of shenanigans happen. Opetaia, to his credit, puts on the IBF belt as a way of demonstrating that he does not wish to be stripped, to counteract these statements that have been put out that the IBF feels disrespected for whatever that's worth. He is obviously adorned with the Zuffa title and the ring title. He calls for the other champions in the weight class, that he wants big fights, that he would love to fight the winner of Zurdo Ramirez versus David Benavidez. Max Kellerman, who is doing the interview, states that, Opetaia, we believe you that you're undisputed already, and that you have the Zuffa title and the ring title. Isn't that undisputed enough? Which, again to Opetaia's credit, is not buying it and does not seem to believe in everything Kellerman says and doesn't just agree with it for the sake of being interviewed. which is admirable. Post-fight. In the post-fight interview, Jai Opetaia comes out and says that technically he is still not stripped, which, according to the statement I just read you, would mean that the IBF did not do what they said they were going to do. The IBF said that you will be declared vacant whether you win or lose, but Opetaia gets told that he is not stripped. Well, maybe this is a fighter who is misunderstanding something. Maybe he's remaining hopeful that he could still keep the IBF title. Well, according to Jake Donovan, he says, full story to come on this, but IBF officials also revealed that the collected sanctioning fee was returned on March 7th, one day prior to the fight night, despite on-air insistence to the contrary. Also, the IBF vehemently denies claims that it withdrew sanctioning was due to feeling disrespected over the placement of the belt during Friday's press conference. Quote, in fact, the words belt and placement were not included in the email at all, contrary to what certain members of boxing media have suggested in reports stating they were granted access to the email sent by Daryl Peoples. And an update on Jai Opetaia's title status. The IBF is still reviewing the matter, which means his cruiserweight title remains intact. Jai Opetaia's post-fight speech stressing his commitment to pursuing Undisputed has prompted sanctioning body to investigate the further matter. This is where there are very large problems. Now, if we even look to Opetaia's first Instagram post, which doesn't mean everything, but if we're getting into the symbolism here, if you notice, this title, the Zuffa title, is cropped out to the point where you can't read the words on the belt. But he is displaying the entirety of the IBF crest. Maybe that's nothing, maybe that's intentional, maybe not, but it's interesting, and it certainly is not nothing. I do think, however, that the IBF did something wrong. Whether that thing is pulling the sanction in the first place or backtracking on stripping Opetaia, those things are not consistent with each other. And as much as even in this video, I've said things that are damning of Zuffa, how they want to change the Ali Act, several things. The IBF, by taking the stances that they have, by not being clear, if they want to be more transparent, have a more active social media. Don't send out things that can be misinterpreted or certain members of the boxing media are putting out against you. Have it out there, out in the open. Use your Twitter page. Use your website. You've posted one-page article about Opetaia versus Glanton. This whole issue does not warrant one page of explanation when it's been days and days of not understanding if Opetaia will keep the title, not understanding if the IBF is going to approve the sanction. The IBF gladly took a sanctioning fee, but then refunded it. The IBF needs to be much more clear here to maintain credibility, because that is what Zuffa wants. Zuffa Boxing and their funders want the sanctioning body titles to seem illegitimate. That is their entire purpose. When the lobbyists are on Capitol Hill, what do they bring up? If you remember, if you bothered to watch the hearing, this was a day after the WBC had stripped Terrence Crawford. And they brought that up ad nauseum to talk about how the WBC doesn't respect their champions, about how these sanctioning bodies are fickle and will do things out of favor or not out of principle. The IBF, to this point, is known as the sanctioning body that sticks to their law in all cases, that at times mandate certain fighters to be mandatory for world titles that people greatly dislike, as I've discussed in this video alone, giving Mairis Briedis the mandatory status coming off of the loss to Opetaia. People did not like that. People did not like that Hussein Sankara, an unknown Turkish fighter at 40 years of age, was mandatory. But there are many to their support which state that the IBF is following their rules to the letter of the law, and that whether we like it or not, it's good to have someone consistent. But all of this goes to discredit that, greatly so. The IBF should have made it clear, and clear days beforehand, that they are not sanctioning the fight, if they really felt that the Zuffa belt was not being presented as a trophy, which, by the way, of course it was not. The Zuffa belt was being presented as a world title. They keep calling him Opetaia, Zuffa World Champion. They put the Zuffa title in focus in every single graphic or on top in every single graphic. Of course, this is not being presented as a trophy. If that's what the IBF felt, pull sanction and strip him immediately. Now, to Opetaia's credit, and I wanted to talk about this as well, I think Opetaia has done well for the position he's been put in. Opetaia does not want to be stripped of the IBF. Why? Because contrary to Max Kellerman or anyone else that says fighters don't care about the current sanctioning body titles, that they call it alphabet soup, that the IBF and the WBC and the blah, blah, blah are all a bunch of nothing, fighters don't believe this. Opetaia wants to be WBC, WBA, WBO, and IBF undisputed world champion. That's been his goal since he's captured that world title. And Opetaia does not want to lose that IBF belt. Maybe the IBF, because of Opetaia's defenses of that title, because of his reclaiming of that IBF title in the Briedis rematch, maybe they make some kind of exception. They find some sort of rule that can let them not strip Opetaia. But Opetaia certainly does not want to be stripped here. So, okay, that's it, right? This is the end of the story. Will Opetaia be stripped? We don't know yet, but for the sake of being timely, I wanted to sort of give everyone context of the whole situation. And I think I've done an admirable job. Well, that's not the end of the saga, because if we continue here, according to Ring Magazine, an attorney representing Jai Opetaia says the boxer has, quote, good reason to believe, quote, the IBF's decision to withdraw sanctioning of his title fight with Brandon Glanton was a, quote, product of coordinated industry-wide collusion designed to punish him for working with Zuffa Boxing and to deter other athletes from doing the same, per a letter sent to a sanctioning body president that was obtained by the Ring's Rick Reno and Mike Coppinger. Quote, aided and abetted by other sanctioning bodies and promoters, the IBF's action intentionally inflicted or threatened to inflict significant financial and reputational harm on Mr. Opetaia. He is aware of messages between high-level executives essentially admitting to the scheme. There's a lot more here in a tweet from Dan Raphael that I won't get into, but it's essentially saying that he is aware from a scheme. Eddie Hearn, chairman of Matchroom Boxing, has publicly stated that sanctioning bodies would, quote, make a stance sooner than you think, and Jai would be stripped days before the IBF drew sanction. The letter goes on to accuse a lot of people of a lot of things. But this is the kind of retaliation, this is the kind of thing, for lack of a more specific word, that Zuffa wants. They wanted the IBF to be put into a pressure cooker and turn up the dial. And what did you get? The IBF swing one way, then the other, when they should have taken a hardline stance from the beginning. Either let Opetaia defend his belt or pull sanction. But there was no excuse from them to be as unclear as they were, to rely on certain members of the media to say their statements accurately. But for Opetaia, Undisputed, I think, as a dream and the way we understand Undisputed, is dead. Thank you. If you like this video, feel free to subscribe. I'm back. I'm doing videos, and hopefully we get a better topic in the coming week. And if you like this style of video, and if I got anything wrong, or if you just want to say hello, feel free to leave a comment. But with that, goodbye.